But have no fear, because Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team are all over this evening's big news developments. Shannon.
And there are plenty of them. Laura, thank you so much. Big news on special counsel Robert Mueller and President Trump tonight, plus a whole lot more.
5 months worth of missing texts between two former members of Robert Mueller's team accused of anti-Trump bias recovered by a government watchdog. Ed Henry's following the storm of controversy the messages are causing on Capitol Hill and beyond. Plus, does a highly secretive memo accusing the FBI and DOJ of abusing government surveillance implicate James Comey or other top officials? Utah Congressman Chris Stewart is here with the inside scoop. And will the president's proposal on immigration bring Congress closer to a deal or deepen the divide?
I think it's a nice thing to have the incentive of, after a period of years, being able to become a citizen.
Steyerwalt has the answers.
Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. New tonight, 3 major stories breaking at this late hour. The New York Times reporting that President Trump ordered special counsel Mueller fired. But the president reportedly backed down after the White House counsel threatened to resign rather than carry out the directive. We've got brand new insider information about what really happened. There are also late-breaking developments tonight on the missing text messages now found between FBI agents Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. And the White House has released a potentially legacy-defining, controversial new immigration plan. Team coverage tonight. Doug McElway on the latest moves on DACA and a new gambit by President Trump already firing up the right. But we begin with Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry working the phones on the Mueller story and breaking some news himself. Good evening, Ed.
Shannon, great to see you. The phone's still being worked, and we're breaking tonight. A source close to the White House telling Fox the New York Times is accurate. The president did tell top officials last summer he wanted to fire Robert Mueller, but White House counsel Donald McGahn and other aides convinced the president not to do it. This source could not confirm or deny, though, whether McGahn actually threatened to resign over it. But the source added that in June 2016, top aides at the time, Reince Priebus, Chief of Staff Steve Bannon, the senior advisor, believed the president was in fact going to fire Mueller, were very worried about the political fallout. They said, in the words of this source, this is going to blow up. That's why they pushed back hard. And it's important to note, in the end, the key here is the president did not fire Mueller, obviously. Ty Cobb, a White House lawyer, I spoke to him a few moments ago. He would not confirm or deny any of this, but said, quote, "We declined to comment out of respect for the office of the special counsel and its process." Also breaking today, sort of the second track on these big stories involving investigations. The Justice Department Inspector General has recovered thousands of text messages between those two FBI officials that had somehow gone missing. And there are other new ones from an earlier time period. And what we're learning is going to pour some gasoline on this fire about an alleged anti-Trump bias. Republican Senator Charles Grassley revealed tonight he has seen some new text messages from that earlier time period in 2016, and they show these FBI officials were worried about how they would be perceived by a future President Hillary Clinton if they were too tough on her during her FBI interview about the email server, the exact concern that allies of President Trump have been raising in recent weeks. Then there are new texts showing that in March 2016, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page talked about the possibility of a need for a special counsel to investigate the Clinton email situation. They even raised the possibility of bringing back Patrick Fitzgerald. You'll remember he was the special counsel in the Valerie Plame case. At one point, Strzok saying, "Don't forget that Comey was a deputy attorney general in the Bush administration and appointed Fitzgerald as special counsel in the Plame matter, and that he was there for Comey's investiture." Strzok texted back, "I could work with him again, and damn, we'd get bleep done." So these are new messages from March 2016. Remember, we had been told there are more messages from December 2016 through May 2017 that were gone somehow. Government officials told Fox today the Justice Department has now gotten back all of those texts by taking possession of at least 4 phones belonging to Strzok and Page, a development that Trump aides jumped on today. Meanwhile, breaking tonight, Charles Grassley says it appears that Strzok and Page transmitted federal records related to the Clinton case on private non-governmental devices. Remember, they were investigating, the FBI, or at least they were supposed to be, whether Hillary Clinton was using that personal server for official business. They appear to have done the same thing, in part because of one text exchange where Strzok says to Page, Gmailed you 2 drafts about development in the Clinton case, and there was a response about typing it out, getting it out on the home computer. Grassley tonight is saying there may be a whole lot more where Congress has to dig in and find out if there were other devices beyond those 4 phones that might give us a little bit more insight into what was happening inside the FBI, Shannon.
All right. Very interesting, Ed. Keep us up to date. I know you said you're still working the phone, so if you find out more, let us know.
I will.
Thank you. All right. Reaction pouring in tonight to the new immigration outline released by the White House tonight. Doug McElway has the very latest. He joins us now. Seems like folks on both sides of the aisle have plenty to say, Doug.
Sure do, Shannon. We now have before us the Trump administration's long-awaited framework on DACA. Here are the details. It provides a path to citizenship for an estimated 1.8 million dreamers over the next 10 years. It provides $25 billion for border security, including a wall and other security features and personnel. It limits chain migration to spouses and minor children, no extended family. And it eliminates the visa lottery, which critics maintain was rife with abuse. The key question is, how will it fly in Congress? The conservative and influential Heritage Action says tonight the number of dreamers it grants amnesty to, 1.8 million, is simply too high. It, quote, risks opening Pandora's box and could lead to a Gang of 8 style negotiation. That should be a non-starter. But 2 Senate immigration hardliners, Tom Cotton of Arkansas and David Perdue of Georgia, like the framework, Cotton calling it generous and humane. Perdue agrees while appreciating, quote, securing the border and putting an end to extended family chain migration. But conservative Ted Cruz of Texas told reporters, quote, I do not believe we should be granting a path to citizenship to anybody here illegally. Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin is skeptical in a statement tonight, saying it would put the administration's entire hardline immigration agenda, including massive cuts to legal immigration, on the backs of these young people. And House Minority Leader Pelosi calls it an act of staggering cowardice, which attempts to hold the Dreamers hostage to a hateful anti-immigrant scheme. Another question, Shannon, can the House GOP leadership corral its own conservatives to support the Trump framework?
There are going to be things that I probably, in this bill, that if we all work together, that I will vote for, that I probably wouldn't write by myself. But there's going to have to be things in there that maybe another side wouldn't vote for.
Right now, many House conservatives are supporting Representative Bob Goodlatte's framework, which would give Dreamers a 3-year renewable legal status, but with no special path to a green card. President Trump has set a March 5th deadline for Congress to settle the DACA issue. Things just beginning to get underway here, Shannon.
They are getting real. All right, Doug, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
The new immigration proposal lighting a fire under the right already. It's not just the numbers we're talking about 1.8 million, but also this idea the so-called dreamers could ultimately become citizens.
Over a period of 10 to 12 years, somebody does a great job. They've worked hard. It gives incentive to do a great job. But whatever they're doing, if they do a great job, I think it's a nice thing to have the incentive of, after a period of years, being able to become a citizen.
With Fox News Politics editor and editor of the Halftime Report, Chris Steyerwalt. How are you, my friend?
Word up.
Okay, so any surprises for you in what we saw outlined from the White House today?
I was surprised at how workable it looks. I was surprised at how, I mean, you have the start of something potentially big. You have potentially the beginning of, look, Donald Trump had a very rough launch to his presidency. And, you know, I think this is, interestingly, of a piece with the Mueller part. We've heard a lot of, oh, he was going to fire Mueller. He did not fire Mueller. His counsel got him to not fire Mueller. He did not do that. Yes, the White House was not honest about that. Yes, they misled everybody about that because there were contemporaneous reports, but they didn't do it. Part of the maturation of this administration and part of the maturation of this president is that you got to do something on immigration, because if the Republicans don't use this opportunity, don't use this moment, when they've got the White House and both houses of Congress to do something here, this will be around their necks forever. This will never, ever, ever go away. And the question now, and this is a fundamental question, Trump is obviously ready to deal. He's talking about these people, and guess what? The hardliners are right. This is a framework that could be expanded to the rest of the people in the United States illegally who are in but haven't broken other laws. So this is a this is a pretty big matzo ball they've got hanging out there.
All right. Folks upset on the left and the right. Again, to dip into what Senator Cruz had to say, I do not believe we should be granting a path to citizenship to anybody here illegally. For some reason that to me is utterly inexplicable, we see Republicans falling all over themselves to gallop to the left of Obama in a way that is contrary to the promises made to the voters who elected us. So he doesn't like it from the right. And from the left, we have this from the ACLU. Today, the White House released a hateful, xenophobic immigration proposal. Should be deemed dead on arrival.
But other than that, they thought it was great. Also, I believe that Nancy Pelosi has now just outsourced her press shop to a Twitter bot that just uses different incendiary, like Armageddon or death.
World,
everything is always the worst. You know, look, Cruz is running for re-election. I don't think he can get probably not. They're filing deadlines past. I don't think he can get primaried. But Cruz is obvious. This is why the Republicans are always in a pickle on immigration, because there's too much goodies for politicians who are willing to move outside. You got something, Tom Cotton, who wants to even reduce legal immigration. Tom Cotton is the hard line of the hard line. This is something Tom Cotton says. Ted Cruz, I don't know if he still has future presidential aspirations, but for whoever wants to, and we haven't even heard from the people in the House who are the super hardliners over there, there is still political advantage to be had in finding a space even to the right of Tom Cotton and Donald Trump.
Yeah, so let's talk about Tom Cotton, because he's one of the ones who's been really tough on this, as you said. I mean, he even talked about we need to scale back legal immigration.
Yes.
And then today, this is what he said. The president's framework is generous and humane while also being responsible. I mean, if you got Cotton on board, I mean, he was one of the ones who was in the meeting that allegedly had the S-hole comments and where the folks who had put together this bipartisan Senate agreement felt that they were kind of blindsided by the hawks.
And I'll bet that Cotton and Perdue had more than a little bit with writing of this plan. I would not be surprised at all to learn that they did. Question for Republicans is pretty simple. They have some good momentum finally going. They passed the tax cut. They won round one to the shutdown wars. If they cannot pass legislation, and I will state it simply and state it plainly, if Republicans cannot pass immigration the way that they did, look at how it worked for them on the shutdown. The House has got to be able to pass legislation. They have to get all the Republicans together on something in the Senate, and then they can force the Democrats into action. If they tear at each other's throats right now, they will put themselves right back to where they were.
Okay, when we have various polls showing that across party lines, 70 to 80% of Americans say that they want some kind of resolution that gives legal status to DACA recipients. It could be citizenship. It could be something short of that, work permits, that kind of thing. We see plenty of popularity for that.
Permanent legal status.
What would it mean to the Trump presidency, to his legacy, if this got done on his watch?
Oh, it would rewrite the story. The story of the Trump presidency is rewritten if he is the guy that can finally solve what has bedeviled presidents since Reagan. How do you do this? How do you come up with a deal that works? And here's what his challenge is, that extremists on the left and extremists on the right don't want that 75% popular solution. They want either essentially no borders or no restrictions or draconian measures. Trump finding a way to push bull through and get there with the support of his base mostly intact. This is going to be a tough political maneuver, but it would be the defining thing of his presidency. It would change the narrative on a presidency that we did not at the beginning. We would have never said this is where we'd be today.
Well, and my understanding is the White House wants this to be introduced through the Senate side. We know what's looming over on the House, so we'll see if they can meet in the middle anywhere, because we know these are very different proposals at this point.
Light them up.
All right. You always light it up here, Chris
Happy Thursday.
Great to have you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in. All right, an update now on that deadly high school shooting in Kentucky earlier this week. The 15-year-old suspect accused of killing 2 students was detained this afternoon at his first court appearance. Police have yet to publicly release his identity, but prosecutors say they want him to be tried as an adult. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder and 12 counts of assault. And remember this guy, the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency employee who pushed the wrong button, causing statewide panic over a mistaken ballistic missile warning, reportedly not cooperating with investigators. A Federal Communications Commission official telling lawmakers the FCC is disappointed in the refusal by the employee and hopes, quote, that person will reconsider. We'll keep you updated. And yet another congressman says he will not run for re-election. Republican Ed Meehan notifying party leaders of his plans. He settled a former aide's sexual harassment complaint with taxpayer money. He says the issue's become a major distraction, adding, quote, I need to own it. You've seen the headlines about a Michigan doctor being deported 40 years after he came to the U.S. But there is a whole lot more to his story. Trace Gallagher helps us separate fact from fiction. And hashtag release the memo. Sounds like GOP lawmakers are getting closer to doing just that. As a new report today says the memo alleging abuses of government surveillance programs includes big names like former FBI Director James Comey. Utah Congressman Chris Stewart, who has seen the memo and says there's even more Americans should be worried about, joins us live next. And later on, with speculation mounting that John Kerry is seeking another run at the White House, outrage grows over reports he may be undermining President Trump's efforts towards Middle East peace. We will dig deeper on that story. Despite warnings from the Justice Department that releasing a controversial memo alleging government surveillance abuse would be extraordinarily reckless, Republicans appear to be moving closer to doing just that. They described the alleged conduct as alarming. And according to unconfirmed reporting by the Daily Beast website, the memo specifically names FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, and former FBI Director James Comey. Chris Stewart is a Republican congressman from Utah, member of the House Intelligence Committee, so he would have had a hand in putting this memo together. Great to have you with us tonight, sir.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
Can you, I know that you must be careful about the information that is in the memo before it's released, and I know there's quite a debate over that, but can you confirm for us any of those names and whether they would be relevant and part of the memo?
You know, I'd rather not. We'll wait and see, but I can tell you this. We intend to release a memo. I certainly intend to vote for it. I don't know any Republican members of the committee who aren't going to vote to release this memo, and we should release this memo. And it's so ironic to me, the Justice Department coming to us. They treat us like we're children, like we have to come to them, Mom and Dad, can we get your permission to do this? We are the people's house. We have a constitutional duty and a constitutional right to make these decisions. This is a House investigation. And from the Department of Justice, who's been stonewalling us for months and months, even in the face of a subpoena, to come to us and say, well, don't release it till we review it. And hopefully, I think they would want to stop us from releasing it. We're just not going to do that. The American people deserve to know the contents of what this memo has.
So does the memo as it's prepared now have classified information? Is it something that is available to release without redactions to the American people?
Very close to it. We actually wrote it with the expectation that we would try to release it if possible. And so there's very little. I mean, I would not release the memo as it currently stands. There's a few phrases, a few lines that I think we would want to redact, but it's very close to something that we could release anyway. And by the way, as a former Air Force pilot, I'm used to dealing with some of the most classified information that there is in the United States government, and this memo doesn't come close to that level of sensitivity. This is something that when people read it, they'll go, of course this should have been released. Of course we have a right to know this. It doesn't reveal classified sources or methods in any way.
Well, and we talked about how some have called it alarming. I know Congressman Meadows has said he almost wished he hadn't read it because it was kind of depressing to him that this would happen in the United States. Now, on the other side of the aisle, you have a Democrat, Congressman Mark Pocan, out of Wisconsin, who says, yeah, you should release it. But this is his take. He says, I've read the so-called classified memo, and I can assure you that it is all smoke and no fire. I, too, call for its release to once and for all end the FBI witch hunt. So you got a Democrat saying he wants you to put it out there, too, but for very different reasons.
Yeah, well, good for him. But I tell you what, we'll let people have their own judgment on this. But it's hard for me to imagine anyone reading this memo and just shrugging their shoulders and say, oh, that's no big deal. I assure you that most people will not. Now, maybe some very partisan people will, people who, the same people, frankly, who don't want us to release it. But why in the world would any Democrat or any Republican not want transparency? Since when is the Democratic Party not for transparency? And again, we look forward to American people having access to this and letting them decide for themselves whether they think it's important or not.
Well, and you've said or hinted at the fact that you think there are other things as part of this investigation you also find troubling, aside from what's contained in this memo, that you also think the American people need to know about. Can you tell us anything about that and whether that information might ultimately be released as well?
Oh my gosh, to say that I'm troubled by some other stuff is an enormous understatement. This is just the beginning of a report that we want to give to the American people that deal with incredibly troubling, and I try to soften my language, by the way. I think sometimes there's a little more too much bluster, a little too much drama. But this is incredibly troubling. And I'm not talking about just this memo. I'm talking about the report overall that we're eventually going to have to release to the American people. And it deals with the politicalization of agencies that just shouldn't be. And I'm not talking about the agency as an entirety. I'm talking about very senior, a few very senior people within the Department of Justice, the FBI, and in some cases, the CIA. Why in the world would these things be made into the political arm of one party or the other? And it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. That should be troubling to you. It should be troubling to every American to think that that might have happened.
Very quickly, I want to ask you, obviously the ranking member, Adam Schiff, has said that Democrats are preparing their own memo. He says it's to point out the GOP's misleading characterization of what you put in that memo, and essentially saying that you're doing a disservice to the good people of the FBI. My assumption is you're not trying to sweep up everyone who works at the agency.
Well, of course not, and I look forward to reading this memo. But this, when I say this memo, I'm talking when the Democratic members of the committee are putting forward. Look, this memo that we're going to release is very straightforward. It's very factual. It's not emotional. We draw no conclusions. We allow the reader to draw their own conclusions. And if they want to put forward something else that rebuts that, I look forward to reading it. But once again, facts are the facts. And all we do is lay out the facts. And I don't know what they could possibly put forward to refute that. It'll be interesting to see. I actually am looking forward to it because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, talk about making a puzzle and turning it upside down. I think that's what they're going to have to do with this thing.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing both in due time. Congressman Stewart, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Stu. Good to be with you.
All right, the case of a Michigan doctor arrested on immigration charges has generated a whole lot of publicity. So we're going to separate fact from fiction for you in this emotional, controversial case.
I received a phone call from Lucas that he had been detained. I kept saying to him over and over to stop pranking me.
And remember how the Iranians kicked up trouble in the Persian Gulf while the Obama administration was negotiating the Iran deal? Well, tonight, questions over a big change in behavior by the Iranians amid Donald diplomacy. A Fox News alert now. More fallout from the sex abuse case of renowned sports doctor Larry Nassar. Very strongly worded letter coming out late tonight from the U.S. Olympic Committee, a day after the doctor was sentenced up to 175 years in prison for sexually abusing members of the U.S. gymnastics team and others. Tonight, the USOC is demanding the resignation of the entire USA Gymnastics Board and giving the USA Gymnastics Board just 6 days to comply or face immediate decertification. Despite repeated calls from athletes to stop holding the training camps at the Carolee Ranch, where Nassar abused some of his victims, USA Gymnastics apparently did not terminate the agreement until last Thursday. Keep you updated on that. Well, in a world fraught with fake news, we're checking into the case of a Michigan doctor, an immigrant from Poland, who's now at risk of being deported. Trace Gallagher joins us live to separate fact from fiction. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Shannon, Dr. Lucas Nice is a Polish citizen who has lived in the United States for 40 years. He's a green card holder and a legal permanent resident of the U.S. He is also in danger of being deported. And as CNN tells it, the reason he could be sent back to his home country is because of misdemeanors he committed 25 years ago when he was 17, specifically malicious destruction of property and receiving stolen property, both of which are considered crimes of moral turpitude. CNN says Dr. Nice is being unfairly targeted by the Trump administration. Watch.
How does this make any sense? I mean, when the administration said they were going to go after the hardened criminals, the violent criminals, how does moral turpitude 25 years ago make any sense for a practicing working doctor? I don't understand. Why is he being targeted?
What CNN failed to mention is that while crimes involving moral turpitude certainly make Dr. Nice eligible for deportation, the real reason Immigration and Customs Enforcement began investigating him is because last year Dr. Nice was accused of child abuse. He was never charged in that case, but in recent years, he has also had 18 other run-ins with police, things like speeding tickets, careless driving, causing an accident. In 2008, he was convicted of drunk driving, and in 2013, he was tried and found not guilty of domestic violence. The deputy director of ICE says the laundry list of police encounters put the doctor front and center on the radar of immigration agents. And as for media allegations that Dr. Nice is being unfairly targeted, it should be noted the Trump administration has openly and repeatedly directed immigration authorities to focus efforts on illegal immigrants at the border and those suspected, accused, or convicted of committing a crime. Shannon.
All right, Trace, thank you very much for digging into that for us. New reporting tonight from the Wall Street Journal that the Persian Gulf is quiet, eerily quiet for the Navy's Fifth Fleet. The Iranian military reportedly halted routine harassment by its armed fast boats of U.S. Navy vessels in the Gulf. It's been 5 months since the last encounter. The Journal reporting that the apparent shift in Iranian behavior is coming as the Iran nuclear deal teeters on the brink with President Trump, as well as overall tough talk with Tehran, a major contrast to the Obama administration. The Navy is not commenting on what it believes is behind Iran's change in tactics, other than to say, quote, we hope it will continue in the future. Well, the war of words continued today between the U.S. and Turkey over the Trump administration's continued support for Kurdish fighters in Syria who are battling ISIS. It all risks bringing U.S. troops into the crosshairs of a NATO ally. Lucas Tomlinson has more from the Pentagon.
Shannon, with the ISIS fight winding down, Turkey wants the U.S. to end its support to a key ally in Syria, launching attacks across the border against Kurdish forces. Today, the Pentagon warned Ankara to pull back.
I think the degree to which focus is taken off the reason we're in Syria, which is to go after ISIS, is the degree to which it damages the overall effort. So it actually is not helpful to actually have these operations go on. We recognize that, and we're working with the Turks to try to minimize it.
The U.S. military's partnership with Syrian Kurdish fighters against ISIS has come at a cost, with NATO ally Turkey, who views the Kurds as a terrorist threat. Turkey has fought a decades-long battle against a Kurdish separatist group responsible for killing tens of thousands. A top Kurdish official warned the U.S. it could take action soon. Those who support the terrorist organization will become a target in this battle. The United States needs to review its soldiers and elements giving support to terrorists on the ground in such a way as to avoid a confrontation with Turkey. The U.S. has roughly 2,000 troops on the ground in Syria. Hundreds located in the city of Manbij, only 60 miles east of where the Turkish airstrikes are taking place. Some of these troops have come under fire in recent weeks by Turkish-backed Syrian fighters. There were no casualties reported on either side, but the Americans did shoot back, adding to the dangers they already faced on the ground battling ISIS.
Wherever U.S. troops are, they're going to be able to defend themselves.
We're not in a crisis. Turkey is an ally, and we're going to work with them. But this current issue, offensive, is a distraction.
In a call with his Turkish counterpart, the White House said President Trump, quote, urged Turkey to exercise caution and to avoid any actions that might risk conflict between Turkish and American forces. But today, Turkish officials pushed back on the White House account of the call, saying President Trump did not raise any of those concerns about escalating violence. Shannon?
All right. Thank you very much, Lucas. Where in the world tonight? NBC Nightly News anchor Lester Holt defending a recent report from North Korea. He says the trip was totally worth it, despite reporting from in front of a Potemkin ski resort run as a sham propaganda tool by Kim Jong-un himself. Holt called the ski resort a source of immense pride for a country trying to present a modern face to the world. But reports tonight say the resort is typically empty, and the North Korean government brought in skiers wearing identical outfits to fill up the slopes for the special visit by NBC. Now to India, where there is tight security tonight at the premiere of the controversial new movie Padmavat. Tonight's release follows months of protests by Rajputs, clans of former warriors and kings. They are angry that the movie apparently portrays a romance between a Rajput queen and a Muslim invader. Some of the protests have actually turned violent, leading to the tight security in many theaters refusing to air the film. And authorities are worried that Mount Mayon is about to really blow. It's been erupting in the Philippines for weeks, but scientists say it is still swelling with magma. Police are having a hard time keeping tourists and villagers from sneaking into the danger zone. And whatever you want, you might be able to get it someday if you attend the Alacitas Fair in Bolivia. You just need a miniature of your dream item, and it's to be blessed there by a holy shaman. According to ancient Aymara indigenous beliefs, buying items that symbolize wealth and good fortune help make those wishes come true. Alacita translates into buy me in Aymara. Well, President Trump arrives in Davos, Switzerland, taking his America First message to the global stage and getting a surprise reaction.
If we did a substantially better deal, I would be open to TPP.
That's interesting. Would you handicap?
Are you surprised to hear me say
I'm
that?
A little bit, yeah. I'm a little taken aback.
President Trump landing in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. Media reports predicted confrontations, even a walkout. But instead, the president seemed to be welcomed by leaders of some of the world's largest corporations, Nestle, Deloitte, and Bayer, to name a few.
I just want to say that there's been a lot of warmth, a lot of respect for our country, and a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars, is coming into the U.S., and people are very happy with what we've done, not only on the tax bill, but also cutting of regulations.
The president gave each corporate leader a chance to describe his or her business, and many noted the corporate tax cut as a positive thing. So let's discuss it and more with Fox News contributor and editor at Town Hall, Katie Pavlich, and Philippe Rennis, the former senior advisor to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
Thank you.
Okay, so we heard all this ahead of time, like he's going to be a bull in a china shop. These people are elite and fancy pants. They're not going to like him and his Diet Cokes and his rambling around. This is, though, what Bloomberg said today. They say this, quote, "It was a scene more reminiscent of President Donald Trump's own cabinet meetings than a staid forum of global elites in the Swiss Alps. Trump at a table of top executives from Europe's most important companies holding court as they took turns trying to impress him," Philippe.
Well, if you got to be the bull or the china shop, I think you want to be the bull. They did a few things here that I think were smart. First, the sheer act of going. So the minute they took off yesterday, check, that was smart. Just go right into the belly of the elitist beast. Two, the clip you just showed was very savvy of them, because unlike most bilateral meetings or multilateral, boring organizational meetings you'd go to, they just had global business leaders. And it gave him an opportunity to talk about his economic message and sit with people that he could not sit here. On the flip side, his foreign policy goes with him wherever he goes. And that was where they hit a little bit of a bump today, which sitting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, if he believes that, which as a supporter of Israel, I agree with him, that the Palestinians should either put up or shut up, that's great, but not if you declare that you're going to be the guy to do Middle East peace.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him today with Prime Minister Netanyahu and also with Theresa May out of the UK. But to the point about this, Adam Schiff, one of the top Democrats on the Hill, said this today. Trump goes to Davos, having insulted many of the world leaders there, to tell them to put America first. Apparently, this is the difference between a really smart diplomatic strategy and one that is only, quote, like really smart.
I think the rest of the world is far less offended than we are here in America when it comes to the things that are said. The Brits certainly take things to a lesser offense than we do. But in terms of what the president presented himself today, we have to remember that before he was president, he was a businessman. And these are his peers, essentially. Before he came to the Oval Office, he was working with these people on a different kind of level. They knew who he was. And now they have a different level of respect for him. And because he has done a good job domestically on the economy, with the majority of the people in this country saying the economy is better than they remember it being, he is taking care of things domestically and therefore can go to a World Economic Forum and say, we have taken care of things at home and now we can expand out and reach to others to benefit from the things that we have done back in America.
Well, and there is still this chatter that tomorrow when he gives an address to everybody on Friday, there are going to be some people who decide to walk out. So we will watch and see. Last night, Ambassador Bolton was sitting here and said that could be the best thing that would happen to Trump, because then you're saying, great,
you're doing something wrong if you don't get a walk out in Davos.
Yeah. So, we'll see how that. Meantime, I want to ask also about this. There are a number of Democrats who are sort of poo-pooing these tax cuts as we get yet another announcement by Home Depot that they're going to give a $1,000 bonus to everybody directly because of the tax cuts. But here is how House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is describing what's happening.
A little mouse trap. It's got a little piece of cheese on there, and there's a mouse about to take, and that's called the middle class. Get this little thing, and we get this big bonanza. You get the crumb, we get the banquet.
Okay, so she said crumbs, and she's not the only one. We saw the same thing from Debbie Wasserman Schultz saying the same thing. These are just crumbs. It's interesting because we're talking about a $1,000 bonus, and this is now millions of employees who have been impacted by this, Philippe, but Democrats want to downplay it. Is it the right move?
I'm glad you two are sitting down.
What?
I can't.
What?
I'm not going to defend what Nancy Pelosi said.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
We have
Everyone
an
at home,
agreement.
sit down.
World peace is happening right now.
The larger point, obviously, is that long term, this is not how to increase someone's economic well-being. But that's not the way to say it.
By giving them a tax cut?
Well, it's short term. It's a quick boost. I think there's a lot of glitter into it. But whatever, that is a legitimate argument. It is not a good idea to say $1,000 is not a big deal to everyone. The only people $1,000 is not a big deal to are people at $1,000 is not a big deal to.
People like Nancy Pelosi who would never have to worry
if you're
about
a mouse, that cheese is it's a whole meal.
No, exactly. You say $1,000, and most people are like, that would make a huge difference in my real life.
Well, we keep hearing about this talking point that it's not long term, but to a family who's making $40,000 to $60,000 a year, say you get a $2,000 bonus, that's 5% of your salary, and to them, long term, that means they can invest in their kids' college tuition. They can put that into a retirement account over time so that $2,000 can grow into more money. And so for them to keep doubling down on this crumbs comment at a time when Democrats are struggling with the classification of being the party of the elitists, the party of the rich. This is one of the reasons Hillary Clinton couldn't get the same voters that Bernie Sanders got, and why Donald Trump, as a billionaire, was able to go in as a blue-collar billionaire to these places and relate, is because he never downplayed the quality of work or the amount of money, no matter how small or big, that people were earning. And when you hear people here out there that, $1,000 is nothing to them, to them it is a lot of money. And I think that disrespecting that from a political perspective when Democrats are struggling with this narrative just seems really stupid.
I think they could also identify with the fact that he liked buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah.
And McDonald's.
I mean, who doesn't?
I mean, exactly.
I don't think Nancy Pelosi would identify with that.
And who wants other people using their toothbrush?
If you're not down with that. All right, Philippe and Katie,
this
great to see you both.
This wasn't live, right? No one heard me say that.
This is live, and we marked the calendar about what you said.
There are no Democrats watching, so I think I'm okay.
Thank you both. Come back soon. All right, we have heard plenty about alleged Russian collusion, but what about Palestinian collusion? An update on a story you heard first last night right here on that shocking report claiming former Secretary of State John Kerry tried to undermine President Trump's Middle East peace efforts. We're digging deeper into that story next. Amid reports he could be eyeing another White House run, former Secretary of State John Kerry facing tough questions over reports he tried to undermine President Trump's Mideast peace efforts. Kerry allegedly sent a message to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas through a confidant, quote, not to give in to Trump.
That kind of advice would be stunningly unpatriotic, and I don't think that John Kerry would do something like that.
Starting his own peace process, well, God bless him. Go for it. Knock yourself out, Secretary Kerry. Now, I'd like to hear Kerry's response to this. If he denies it all, that's going to be interesting. I don't think he will. I think it has the ring of truth.
Well, Clifford May is the founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and joins us live. Great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we have reached out through multiple channels to try to get some clarification or any comment from the former Secretary of State. And again, we welcome that, and we want to have any clarity that we need to have whether these comments did or didn't happen or what he intended by them, if indeed they were made. What do you make of what you've heard so far?
Well, if indeed that's what he said, then he is attempting to undermine the U.S. government's foreign policy. And for a former Secretary of State to do that strikes me as probably unprecedented and probably un-American. You just don't do that. It's no favor to the Palestinians to say, you know what, don't negotiate, don't be involved in a peace process under Trump. Wait a year or so, he'll probably be out of office, which we're told he said as well, and then you'll get a more obliging president who will do what? Revert to the peace process under the Obama administration, which achieved nothing.
Well, to me, too, that logic doesn't make any sense, because if you think you're going to end up with a President Mike Pence, and you think he's going to be he's going to cave in any way on Israel policy or Jerusalem, that seems nonsensical to me.
That seems, but maybe he's saying wait for a President John Kerry, and I will help you with that, because that's what we're hearing rumors of. But look, I think at this point we know. I know President Trump has a vision of trying to get a peace process going, but with Mahmoud Abbas, that's pretty hard to do. It was always hard to do. I always suspected he was not somebody who saw himself shaking hands with Netanyahu on the White House lawn. But he recently had his, kind of a meltdown, a 2-hour speech that was anti-Semitic, in which he said, Trump, I hope your house is raised, meaning your family. He really made it clear that he will never sign a peace agreement, no matter what deal is put on the table by the Israelis. So and the thing is, he's 82 years old. He's not in great health. He smokes. He's 14 years into a 4-year term. He was only elected once, never ran again. He has never designated a successor, nor is there a process for his succession. I just don't see how you get to peace from here at this moment.
Yeah, and on Sunday when we were in Ramallah, I talked with Saeb Erekat, the top Palestinian negotiator over there, and asked him, are they kind of at their end of their rope as a boss? Was that speech a goodbye? Where are they going from here? And he said, really, short of this president revoking everything that he just said about Jerusalem on December 6th, they're not coming back to the table. And I said, you have no voice in this process if you don't come back. Do you want things decided without your input? And he just says that until that Jerusalem thing changes, we're not coming back.
Part of the problem with the peace process, so-called, over all these years is it's missed an important point. You can't have peace, a two-state solution, unless you accept that there are two states for two peoples. One of those peoples will be the Palestinians, one of those will be the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are not recognized by Abbas as a people. So I don't know how you get there from here in that situation as well.
Okay, so the Republican Jewish Coalition, part of their statement today was this: John Kerry is no longer a representative of the American people, and his action conducting a shadow foreign policy is reckless and undermines the possibility of achieving peace. The American people chose President Trump in part because he promised to pivot away from the failed policies of John Kerry.
I think that's true. And one of the ways he did that, look, in recognizing that Jerusalem is, as it is, the capital of Israel, he's not ruling out the possibility of a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem or near East Jerusalem. That's still a possibility. But what he's doing is essentially finding a clever way to nullify the body blow given by the Obama administration in December 2016 UN Security Council Resolution 2334, which said Jerusalem, including the Jewish quarter of the Old City, doesn't belong to the Jews, including the holiest sites for 3,000 years for Jews, do not belong to them. That delegitimizes Israel in a way that makes it impossible to have a successful peace process.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Clifford May, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. All right, the votes are in. The Baseball Hall of Fame is getting some new members. We're going to tell you who's in, plus what you need to know for tomorrow.